Hey guys, Whitney here. Welcome to the Passive Investing Made Simple show. I'm so excited for you guys to be here. We do this show live every Tuesday so you can learn about the ins and outs of passive investing and go into your next deal with confidence. Now, sometimes we're talking terminology, math, sometimes we're talking strategy and due diligence. Sometimes we're just talking about how do you organize life so you can create time to scale your passive portfolio. And that's where we're going to be diving in today. But before we get started, if you haven't already checked out passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com, I've got some free goodies there for you. You can get access to my calendar. We can talk all things passive real estate, as well as you get priority access to our deals here at passiveinvesting.com. So be sure to check out passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. Now, I am so blessed to have such a wonderful, talented woman in a mastermind. We're in the same mastermind together, and I can't wait to introduce you guys to her here. Anna Lee, founder of Outsource Your Tasks. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Whitney. So much fun. Thank you for inviting me over.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we usually center around answering three main questions here on the show: the what, the whys, and then the hows. But here we're going to spend a lot of time, I feel like, on the why, because as I talked to a lot of our investors before the show, and they were really curious, especially passive investors, like, why do I need to engage a virtual assistant? And there, as you and I have discussed, a few times, like there's so many reasons why you should do this. But before we dive in to the content of our show, Anna, will you take a little bit of time to introduce yourself, what it is you do, and how you got into it?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Anna, and I'm a mom of three, a very busy professional. I retired from my corporate job just a little over about a year ago. And as any investor, I was probably part of this rat race and trying to do it all and juggle, and was very busy, and work-life balance seemed to be completely impossible. And at some point, just kind of stumbled upon hiring a virtual assistant for just one of the gigs that I had in real estate. And I was kind of addicted to that. And I just created the whole business out of this. But in the end of the day, my whole goal is just for me to spend as much time with family and just enjoy life. So I'm just a regular person enjoying life.
Well, and you scaled a business around solving, people's needs, and that's, really such, I think people that are really passionate about what they do, like there's that heartfelt connection there, right? Like really solving the problem. And you saw that problem and you tackled it. All right. So you and I were talking briefly right before the show. And I was letting, we were talking about who's the audience that we're talking to. The majority of the people that listen to the show are passive investors. Some of them have their own day job or they have their own business. And so really, we can kind of like dive in and out of like how you can use outsourcing to either elevate you out of what you do day to day, or elevate you into a more CEO role with your passive investing. But before we get into the hows, let's talk about what does it mean to outsource? What does this actually look like?
Yeah, so it could be you outsourcing. Like I'll just give you an example that probably would be relatable to anyone. Does anyone have a cleaner that comes and clean their house? So that's the first, task I outsource, right? And it has nothing to do with virtual assistant per se, but we outsource on a daily basis, right? We have a Grubhub, we have an Uber, right? So we have a lot of outsourcing that we're doing on a daily basis here in the United States. But when it comes to outsourcing to virtual assistant, I kind of say, is there anything else that you do that doesn't require a physical presence of an individual here to support you in your business, investing, W-2, or just day-to-day life, right? So I would say kind of like I'll codify it this way and just kind of put the wider angle on that, and we can probably dive deeper in some specific cases and who and when and what to hire, I guess, when we need it.
But and then why should somebody consider outsourcing? And I will put myself out there first, right? Like for me, I'm a go-getter. I feel like I'm like really highly organized, and I'm like, why would I spend the time to train somebody to outsource something to them when it would just take me like 5 or 10 minutes to do? Like, why would I do that? Why would I even consider that?
Well, let me ask you, kind of put the question back to you, Whitney. Do you
All
only
right,
spend
let's
5 minutes
do it.
do you only spend 5 minutes on these activities? Like in your 24-hour day, do you only spend 5 minutes on your activities that you could have outsourced?
I mean, maybe like, well, it depends, right? Like cleaning, heck no. Like I go down a rabbit hole when it's cleaning, like,
Right.
and it's my form of procrastination. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so this is a very common question. So when people come over to me or they just find out what I do, they ask me, should I outsource? Like, when is the right time to outsource? Do I even need that? Right. So what I normally suggest, like I have this like tricky solution for you. Think about everything that you do in your life, right? Whether it's for your, career related opportunities or investments, whatever, but or could be related to your personal life. And think about the tasks and just kind of outline them, right? And you just kind of start, cleaning, whatever else you do. And I want you to then start shifting those tasks into two buckets. One bucket, I want you to define it as $10 an hour task. And the other bucket is $200 an hour task. I purposely don't have anything in between because it's going to be easier for you to say, oh yeah, it's more of a this situation versus that. So then I want you to stop doing a $10 an hour bucket items. I want you to only concentrate on the $200 an hour buckets, or maybe something that doesn't have a value because it's so precious, right? Spending time with your kids or hanging out with your friends. We don't count that as 200 because that's probably invaluable, right? Millions of dollars that's worth for you, right? So list that out, and then you quickly see how much you do per day that's in that $10 category. And I would say start with that list first, and possibly maybe you can measure out how much time you spend on that. Sometimes we sort of think that we only spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes out of our day on certain things, and then later on we find out that we were distracted by somebody and we actually took us more of an hour to complete that task, or we just presumed it only took us 30 minutes a day, but it ended up being 3 hours a day, right? Whatever that is, try to measure this and like be proactive about measuring this. And you'll quickly realize you'll have a part-time job at least for a virtual assistant to support you.
All right. Okay. So somebody goes through and they put these tasks into two different buckets. Okay. They identify, when I'm working with my coaching clients, I'll actually like help them, tease out, like, there's some of those tasks that are like, oh, I really actually love doing that. And I'm like, well, that doesn't mean you should be doing it, but let's hold on to these right now and get rid of everything else. Right. Okay. Now you've got this bucket of tasks. You've kind of created a job description, right? For all intents and purposes for the VA. Like, how does the hiring process look like? Like, why, how does somebody go about doing that?
Sure, I think it just depends what types of activities there are, but let's just assume that majority of people need a generalist VA, right? Just help me with my life, organize my life, right? Just recently placed a person that she just said, I am just done shopping for everyone. I want my person to be, Instacarting this, Ubering people there, scheduling medical appointments for the whole family, right? Just like I need some organization with my life because she had a lot of kids. She has a lot of kids and family, and she's kind of like the house manager right now. And she wants to fire herself from that role because she just wants to enjoy her life, right? So I'd say, if people start on their own, yeah, there are multiple sources where they can go online, right? The most common ones seem to be Upwork or Fiverr. This is kind of, the most popular ones. You can hire a person from anywhere in the world. Our company seems to be concentrating more on Philippines, but we also hire from Latin America and parts of Europe and Eastern Europe, and it just depends on the task, right? But general VA could be working anywhere and could be working for you anywhere. And it could be part-time, it could be full-time, again, depends on your requirements, but you'll probably just start online and just, you have to be clear on your, skill on the skills and responsibilities that are relevant for the role. And ideally, you're not asking for non-complementary skills. So if you're just generalist VA, it's understandable that they're just going to be doing almost like a personal assistant. They're going to be doing multiple different tasks, a variety of tasks, but they're not necessarily a subject matter expert tasks for any specific industry or niche or sort of responsibilities. Now, if you are hiring for, maybe you run a business, maybe you have a law firm, or maybe you're a doctor, right? And maybe you want to find somebody for the back office. If you're looking for like a medical biller, don't expect them to be a salesperson at the same time, right? So just like some of the skill sets have to be complementary. They just don't try to put like two different roles into one that are completely different from each other. Other than that, I think it's fairly easy. We have like a gig economy that's so open and popular that you just go online and post for who you're looking for.
Well, and I think I've tried several times to hire a VA, and I now have like a really great one. I would say they're more focused on business. I've had them handle a couple of personal tasks here and there, with some success, right? Now, what about, I guess let's just take for me, for example, I'm totally fine. You can pick on me. That's totally fine. What should I outsource first? Should I look to outsource, my business, my personal, my investing, when you work with somebody, like, how do you help them decide which area of their life they need the most support in first?
Normally I have a conversation, and sometimes it's interesting how the conversation starts. I really need this. And then we almost have this like 30 minutes psychology session, and almost like a therapist, we end up at totally different, perspective. I was just on a call with somebody, it's a business owner, and they said, I really need an operations manager. And we came back to realizing, oh, you just need a transactions coordinator, right? So it just kind of depends on what you're looking to accomplish, right? Is it the time freedom, right? Like, do you just want to get more time? And is it something that in your personal life that just takes a lot of it? Or is it something in your business or any professional career that you have that takes a lot of time? Unfortunately, sometimes you can't really outsource yourself if you are a W-2 employee, right? And you're a corporate worker or whatever, but maybe there are a few tasks that you can have in the support of that, right? So I would say start with your goal. Is it the growth, right? So again, if it's a business owner, is it the growth, or is it an investor that they're just looking for more deals to come, right? So look for what your goal is first, and then that goal would be the why, right? And then the goal will define what actually you need to outsource first.
Well, let's take a hypothetical passive investor who's like working full time, has a high income earning job. Maybe they're a physician, maybe they're a tech worker or something like that. And they would love to invest passively in more deals, but they just can't quite seem, even though passive investment is very highly time leveraged, right? They just can't seem to get the time to educate themselves, search for all the operators, schedule the calls with all the operators, all of that. Like, how would you help them initially, like, look at, leveraging a virtual assistant, potentially like overseas in order to kind of help, them scale their portfolio?
Right. I would say that hiring comes with responsibilities, right? Like almost having a child comes with responsibility of raising them. Hiring also comes with responsibilities. You don't just kind of like magically hire somebody and they solve your problems without any proper sort of kind of coordination, management, onboarding, right? So I always say that if you're not ready to dedicate a little bit of time upfront, right, to provide that training, provide that education, provide what you're looking for, set up KPIs, because even if you're not running the business operation, even if you describe the passive investor, the KPIs or key performance indicators have to be set from the get-go, right? So you have to indicate what are you really looking for when you hire someone. And, hopefully you already understand your own parameters and how you're looking for those investments. I would never take any advice from a virtual assistant on which investment I should go for. But what I could do is I have my parameters and how I measure deals. And then I can train my virtual assistant and tell them, listen, I'd like for you to, whatever it is, go online and research operators, right? Those are my criteria. They have to be, maybe 5 years in operations. That's the minimum. They have to be producing, I don't know, 10% IRR, whatever it is, right? Whatever your metric of choice, you can preset in the very beginning and then have that sort of like monotonous work to be done by somebody else. And then that person just delivers the results for you. And this is just an example for this hypothetical. I'll give you some like personal life examples that I personally myself used. One time I needed to pretty much know all the infusion centers around Philadelphia. When my father was sick and I needed the large doses of vitamin C infusions, right? This is my personal life situation. And I was like, it will just take me forever. Going online and calling everyone, I really needed to find out what the cost was because he needed to have like a very long regimen. And very often I wanted to find out if they have concierge service coming to the house, or do we have to go to their office? I wanted to see if there is a doctor appointment required before, and I wanted to know the cost, and I wanted to know if they have any discounts if you sign up for like 10 sessions and more. It's a lot of work. I could do it. I just don't want to do it. And it's my father. I really want to help him, right? So right away, I thought about why don't I just ask my virtual assistant? So within 3 hours, and that's how much it took, right? For me, the procrastination alone would probably took like few days. And then for me, just dialing, and then I'll probably give up after three people that I told. But I had a list. The person called about 50 facilities within like 25-mile radius. Everything was sorted by the distance, what the price was, what the requirements and everything else that I needed. And I just had an Excel spreadsheet with everything. And I was like, oh my God, this is the reason why I do what I do, because it's just like I'm just every single day I'm thinking, what else can I outsource, right? So I wanted to give you like more of a life example, outside of maybe investing in business that could be helpful too.
No, absolutely. And, from a business standpoint, what I love using, my virtual assistant for is the research piece, and kind of like what you just said, right? I do a lot of education online, and like my whole first year, I did all these videos, and then I didn't track the usage or the views of those videos, and measuring the impact of those videos throughout the year. And so like I got to the end of the year, I'm like, what content has been, resonating with people? And I'm like, it would take me forever. It's all there. Like it's totally visible, but I wouldn't be able to, I could just, like you said, what's the opportunity cost in your case, like with your father's health, and, in this case, like when in business development, like what's the opportunity cost by that procrastination? So I love it. And then like within a day, I had like all the videos I've ever done, all the podcasts I've ever done, like, all the related stats to it. And I was like, honestly, it was probably better done than I would have done it for myself. Don't tell my boss that, guys. I did not say that out loud, but no, I'm just kidding. I mean, but like you said, I handed them like, just a few key details, those KPIs. What am I actually looking for? But the product I got back was far more detailed. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Um, Now, you mentioned something earlier about the geographical arbitrage, right? Because I know, when I work with, talk to some business owners, my capacity here at passiveinvesting.com, or like working with private coaching clients, um, there's something that the topic comes up pretty often, like how can we get some leverage for you? And a lot of people push back on me and they were like, I need somebody here in the States, but I can't afford them. There's
Mhm.
something when you and I have had our conversation, you mentioned geographical arbitrage, and I know you just alluded to it a little bit earlier, but help us understand the power of that when it comes to leveraging virtual assistants in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just think about a generalist assistant, right? Think about a personal assistant. And if you were to hire one here in the States, on average, you probably would end up paying anywhere between 45 to $65,000 a year. That same virtual assistant, right? Let's say if you hire one from Philippines, will probably end up costing you 10 to 11,000. Right. So on average, depending on who you want to hire, because we don't just, hire generalist virtual assistant, right? We go from the low skill kind of admin assistants to helping business owners with their, HR department, operational manager. We support the startups that are growing pretty fast, building the whole teams, right? So the cost savings is just tremendous because on average, you probably save about 60 to 80% in the equivalent employee here in the United States. And, we have this like great resignation. People just don't want to work anymore, right? Like that's the level of kind of joy, I don't know, people have towards the employment in general, right? So we had these different, trends that are happening after COVID. So that somebody outside of US in a developing country is so grateful and so appreciative if you give them the opportunity to have a stable job. Because when I end up hiring my first team, and I always talk to them on a weekly basis, we have team meetings and stuff, and I just wanted to get to know them better, right? Because I was very new to, let's say, Filipino culture. I had some VAs from Spain, and I had some VAs from Venezuela. And anytime I talk to them, the most common theme is most of the jobs that require higher level education, like bachelor's and master's degree, they don't pay them well. So the virtual type of job that they can get is an opportunity for them to stand out. And I remember just having a conversation with one of my VAs from Philippines. She just said, I just went out with my friends, and one of them is a police officer, one of them is a doctor, one of them is a teacher. And when they found out how much she makes, and she was making $6 an hour at the time, they said, "Oh my gosh, we're quitting. We have to quit. We're just gonna do what you do. How are you doing this? How did you start and whatever?" So just thinking about the global trends, right? So geographical arbitrage, it's not necessarily just the savings, it's the access to the global talent. And there are a lot of highly educated people. They're just waiting to get that stable job and support an employer as much as they can.
Hmm. And there's also the time aspect to this. I mean, one of the things that I really have appreciated with working with a virtual assistant is sometimes I have a harebrained idea and a question that I want them to research and answer, and I send it to at 5 o'clock. They're on the other side of the world. I mean, the amount of work that we can get done almost doubles within a year. So, just, continuing to, move your goals forward if that's something that you'd like to do. Well, we've had we've understand like what virtual assistants are, why it's important to consider them in different aspects of your life. A little bit of how to do that. How does somebody get started with actually, you've given us some frameworks kind of peppered along the way, but, I just want to give you the opportunity, like, how does somebody get started, in figuring this out and
Mhm.
understanding if they, what kind of help they need to onboard?
Sure. I mean, if you want to have like one slide for that, and I'll give you maybe like 3 different options that people have if you want to share, give me the
You can
ability.
go ahead and share, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And if you guys aren't, if you're listening on your podcast player of choice, we'll do our best job of,
I'll describe it.
translating. Yeah, thank you.
I'll make it as audible version as possible. Right. So I kind of divided it up in 3 buckets. It's DIY, there are traditional virtual assistant agencies, and there are staffing companies, which we are a staffing company. And I would kind of want to separate the 3 different approaches, right? So you can definitely hire yourself. It's not hard. It's just time consuming, right? And again, when you ask somebody whether you have to hire yourself or hire like a help to do it for you, it's the same type of question, right? We started with, what do you want to outsource? Well, we're providing the service of outsourcing the outsourcing, right? So it's kind of what your flavor of choice, but you can definitely hire yourself. The things that just go into hiring, you have to create a job description. There be very clear about the skill sets, responsibilities. I already mentioned, don't try to combine everything unless it's just a general VA that supports your personal life, like a personal assistant. You'll have to create an application form where people would actually click and apply. You want to post it on different job boards. The reason why I like to have your personal application form is that it's so sort of kind of like dynamic that you can post it everywhere, right? So you go on Upwork, you go on Fiverr, you go on Online Jobs PH or Facebook, whatever, right? Whatever you post, people are always applying using your link. And you can use Google Forms, you can use any type of kind of forms that you can track everyone in one funnel. And then once you start getting the candidates, you want to pre-qualify them. You don't want to interview every single one of them, right? Because sometimes people just apply and they're not really qualified to who you're looking for. And then you want to interview the maybe top 10% of selected candidates, or maybe 20% of selected candidates, and then you'll select your top one, right? Don't forget, there's a lot about the onboarding and management overall. Again, I started the conversation with, there is a responsibility that comes along with hiring a virtual assistant. The other 2 options are traditionally there are virtual assistant agencies. So how they're operating, the virtual assistant is being employed by the agency, right? So they have staff, and then the client comes in and they said, I need help with admin tasks. So that an agency employs a VA for that client, and the premise is that they're going to be managing a VA for you, which sounds great. I started myself like that. I used to be employed with my W-2 job, and I had a business running, and I had a busy family. So I was like, great, somebody else is going to be managing, a VA for me. I don't have to spend time on that. In real life, it really doesn't work this way because there's a lot that's lost in translation. I had to train a manager for the manager to train a VA. And that triangulation actually created more difficulties than more productivity. And then the other point about the agencies is that the typical model is you pay the agency and the agency compensates the virtual assistant. So their whole model is that they kind of upcharge you. Typically, they upcharge you about double the amount what the VA is getting, sometimes even more. One of the examples, and I kind of indicated that leads to a high turnover from virtual assistant perspective, is when I hired before from the agency, let's say my rate was $10. And my VA was working for me great, and 3 months later just disappeared. I can't find him, they can't find him. Turns out he comes back to me within a couple weeks and message me on WhatsApp and saying, Anna, I'm sorry, I was very underpaid, but if you hire me for $4 an hour, I'll be yours for the rest of my life, something like that, right? I was like, how much did they pay him if $4 makes him happy and I'm paying 10, right? So there's a lot of that underpayment that's happening, and VAs are generally unhappy to work for an agency. There are kind of trends that are happening in the virtual assistant world. They all start with BPO. That's where they kind of work in the call center. Then they realize, oh, I can be a virtual assistant, work from home. And then they transition to that. And then they being hired by virtual assistant agencies just because of the volume. And then they realize that, they're being underpaid, or they're not having great conditions, and they always have switch of clients. So then they realize, oh, I can work for myself. And this is where we sort of kind of come in, or staffing companies. That's the third option. What we do is just provide the sourcing, right? You kind of pay us for the sourcing. So, and other staffing companies that operate in a similar way. So VAs normally then place directly with you, right? We just did the job creation. We normally, pre-qualify about 100 candidates and then interview about 25 candidates and only present the top 3 for you to choose from. So that process is completely outsourced, and virtual assistant is then working directly for you. They're placed with you, and they're managed and paid by you, right? So there's no upcharge on the hourly rate. You only pay a one-time fee for the sourcing itself, and then they're yours forever, right? So I kind of purposely went the third option route, because I was that person who used to hire from the agencies, and I've learned my lessons, and I said, how can I make it better? So I kind of presented that as a third option. I hope that helps.
No, absolutely. And I think that's, a very key distinction here, right? Like, you can certainly do this yourself, right? If you're, really good at putting together your own job descriptions, and, and it requires you to know what you're looking for. You can also work with the agency, right? Like, and then kind of like, but then you have to manage the manager, right? And what happens with the turnover under the manager? And then, a solution like yours, which is outsourcing the outsourcing, right? Outsourcing the hiring. So definitely, as everything, there's so many different ways to get involved. Anna, I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for our Ask Me Anything session for those people who are here live. So don't go anywhere. But for those people who are listening, via YouTube or their favorite podcast player of choice, how can people reach out to you and find out more about what you offer?
Absolutely. You can check our website, outsourceyourtasks.com, or you can just email me, Anna@outsourceyourtasks.com.
Excellent. And thank you so much for spending time with us here today. Again, don't go anywhere. And for those of you who are here live, or listening to us after the fact, thank you so much for, investing in yourself and potentially your business and investing future, right? By learning how to outsource. But more importantly, thank you for investing your time in yourself and furthering your knowledge. Guys, we will see you next week.